There we go. Beautiful. Hello.
Well, don't you know that hair and makeup just finished up?
You bet mine too. Can you tell?
I do, I do. Instagram filters are non-existent.
Well, I think you somehow find your glamorous filter because you're looking great and your studio is looking great, and I'm
Well,
super
I
excited.
thought if Linda could wear lipstick, then I'm
Then
on
what?
it.
Yeah, maybe I'm next.
Exactly.
How's that sound? So welcome, Marco. It's really great to have you here, and welcome to everyone who's joining us. It's great to have the second of our live studio visits. Today joined by Mariko Paterson. So Mariko is from Vancouver, BC, originally, trained in ceramics in Alberta, then got an MFA in the US at Kent State University with Kirk Mangus and Ava Kwong. And then, Mariko, you did a kind of a whirlwind of residencies and teaching internationally and have landed in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where you're joining us from today, right?
Yes, I have to tack on one extra added important shout out to Langara College, the Vancouver Community College System, which is actually, no offense to Emily Carr, I got in, and this was back, I guess, in the late 1990 or so. We spent the week trying to find the color of our aura, and I bailed. So I ended up.
Wasn't the program for you at the time, right?
No, I knew it was red. That's it. So I actually went to the Vancouver Community College System, which is now Langara College, under Don Hutchinson, who has also since passed away since Kirk Mangus. I had nothing to do with that.
You're innocent.
But yeah, so I did 2 years there, and then I transferred to what I called the Alberta College of Art then. And then,
Right.
And then went down to Kent State. So yeah, and then after that, just briefly, I went to Greenwich House Pottery to be a tech, and then I did like teaching in Michigan, and I don't know, back at Calgary, and in no chronological order in Manitoba and Ohio again, and so yeah, and then I started online dating, and that's how I ended up here.
That was a key part of your ceramics education, right? The online dating. Do you get a degree from that? I wonder.
No, well, pass, and then
Kinda, yeah. So one thing I
fail.
would love to pull out actually is Greenwich House, because you worked there as a studio assistant, I guess. Greenwich House
Yep.
was also an important place for me. And I think one thing that's relevant about that is both Greenwich House and the community college system, actually. So Greenwich House, for those who are watching, is a community studio based in Greenwich Village in New York City. It's been active. It was part of the settlement house movement in the early 20th century. And I think what is important about this is that both Greenwich House and often community colleges are they're sort of community access points for
Yeah.
learning about ceramics, and it's a place where a huge number of people come into finding that they like have an attraction for this
Like
medium. It was
400 people a week just
Yeah, it's amazing,
plowing through there, and they use
and
a
the
lot of
gardener, yeah,
clay.
the gardener
Yes, it's like
functions in that way too. I mean, we have this fantastic studio in our basement, and we'll talk about basements, I think, today. But like sort of how and the ways that people engage with ceramics, I think, is really important
I
because it's unique.
we had Broadway stars. We had well, one of the tech assistants, student assistants, was Peter Lane of Peter Lane Clay, who has an amazing studio in Brooklyn. If y'all just want to go out there and just knock on his door when the pandemic is over, but you know, he now supports that institution very well, and it's beloved as much as it broke our back at the time.
Yeah,
But
right.
but New York is the best boyfriend or girlfriend you could ever have.
Absolutely. I happen to be married to New York also, so
Right. See,
but dating Toronto. So
you're right.
so let's start to look
Exactly.
at let's start to look at some work. What do you have? What's been going on in your studio? Maybe you can start by telling us how the pandemic has been, since it's been
Oh,
so different for everybody, and especially thinking around your kind of creative
sure.
thinking and your studio practice.
Sure. I'm gonna flip you around. Well, not
Sure.
you, me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So,
Oh,
well,
wow.
I'll give you. I mean, I didn't stage it that much, but I was like, I better stage it somewhat, right? Because
Cool.
I did work for an architect in New York for a little while that actually Peter introduced me to. But You know, I have to say that, oopsie, are you so bright? Okay, that's good.
Yep.
A lot of things are bread and butter right now. Look, it's like Dexter. It's just things covered in
Right.
plastic and breathing and will be carved up. So the pandemic really super freaked me out for quite a bit. Um, and I've been paying attention to how other ceramic artists are trying to make a living doing this. And I think a lot of us resorted to making small things. I'll take you down the road here.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't have an outbuilding like Linda. This is like unfair. So also, let me just like show you. Do you know Kristen Abramson?
I don't.
She,
That looks pretty cool, though.
no,
What are we looking at?
she does ceramics and she teaches.
Is that
Also,
one of your famous wiener dogs? Okay.
that's Rodney and Bernard and Mr. Tubes is somewhere. Okay, Rod, that's good. But she teaches at Sheridan and not ceramics anymore, but she's got a keen eye for vintage ceramics. So she sent me this wiener dog separated blanks, and I
Wow.
have decorated
Yeah.
them. I also told Greg Pace that I would put a piece of his in because he is also like one of the reasons for my success. But this is
Wow.
my little kiln room here.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of things are bread and butter right now. I mean,
Oh, I think your internet just cut out a teeny bit. So we're looking at
there's some
Mariko's kiln.
pause connection there. But just small things. Most of my clients, because I like to call you clients, are in the US. And that's just
Yeah.
due to a crazy amount of social media marketing.
Right. Hey, I'm sorry, before you step out of the kiln, can you go back in there for a sec? Because one of the things that's really interesting about your work that some people who work in the medium might know, but others might not, is the layering and the number of firings that you have to do. So one
Like,
thing we're seeing here are pieces that are partially finished. Can you speak to that for a moment, please?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I won't go into, like the totals minute to minute technique, but each piece is fired about 4 or 5 times. It's made, and then it gets a whole Mishima treatment, so it gets a whole incised treatment with a calligraphy pen. Also, I'm redoing my website, but even if you look up on the old website under Star Techy, like TECHY, I have all the. I don't care about secrets. I have no secrets. So the whole process is listed there. So there's Mishima, and then I underglaze everything, and then I cone 5-6 fire everything. I have a lovely Tucker's Ceramics cone art kiln that holds heat really, really crazily. So, and then come decals or decals, as you might call them.
Right.
Right?
So the pieces that we're looking at in the kiln that have a greater expanse of white on them, those are like partway through the process. So you'll
They're
add
partway.
layers of color.
Those guys are going to get. I mean, I've been doing a line of the COVID-19 like N95 nurse masks and things like that, and it just. I know the peanut galleries, Rod, and so they get that, and then they get decal firing, and then they get luster firing on top of it too.
Cool. So like the mug that is in your hand or was in your hand a minute ago,
Yeah.
is that like, when you look at that, what do you see in terms of
what's going on there?
Like possibilities? Like how do you go from what is in your hand to a finished object, not from a technical place, but from a conceptual place? Do you start drawing? Do you refer to another book? Like, yeah.
I mean, historical ceramics is always a huge draw for me. And it's something that like when we tour around, like in the, the little bit that we have as far as historical ceramics is that I'm always looking for iconography and such that pops, that it speaks to me. But I also feel like we live in a time where, like, I love the Garter, and growing up in Vancouver, you can't just get on a plane and go to Toronto. That's $1 million. But
Right.
but traveling from Halifax to Toronto, I'm like, oh, I can book a couple of dates. I'm just kidding. And then I get a couple dinners in, No, but I can visit some ceramic friends, and then I can like pick up on you know, what's going on at the Gardner. But historical ceramics has always been like a huge draw for me. So the Virgin Mary is a big thing. Not that I'm religious, but I have spirituality things going on.
Sure, of
So,
course.
but yeah, I mean, the blank is sometimes I think really daunting and
Yeah.
really inspiring to work with. And I have to be honest, like some things sell. And I also have to touch wood wherever it is that I have had clients who, like, I've had a steady stream of commissions. I'm still taking the CERB, and for Canadian or for American watchers, that is a government sponsored $2,000 a month for, I don't know, 4 months plus. So I will do that. I also have a decal printing business as a side thing. You don't get to see that room. That's a shitstorm.
That's that's the secret room. All right.
That's in there. Nobody gets to see it. And I don't really have an open showroom per se, because I'm an extroverted introvert. So I love all this, but
Mm,
I don't like people coming in my home.
right. So you do work alone all the time, like most with
I
the dogs, I
do,
guess. Yeah.
except for the useless wiener dogs. I do have a lot of American tourists and friends coming up, and and of course Canadians too. And if they're traveling this far across the country, of course I will largely entertain them. Right? I know. Mostly they come to get their autographs. I know, it's super exciting.
I love that this is like a group studio visit.
Yeah.
That's really great.
This is like I don't know. Were you at the last NCCA in Minneapolis?
In Minneapolis, yeah, I
Yes,
was.
yeah, yes. Of course, we met very, very, very briefly at the Bonspiel
Right,
show.
right, right. Sure, yeah.
Right. So I have a very good friend and patron in Tokyo who's from Australia originally, and so I don't know, he owns all of this. So, and so does Peter Lane. So whatever. I have these patrons which are really great, like
Excellent.
they keep things going. And I'm fortunate. I think, well, fortunate, but I think we also have to work really hard at the social media thing. Ugh, just eating away at it. It's like exhausting.
It is.
So
It's a funny avenue though, also for this, as you're saying, sort of extrovert introvert kind of,
yeah,
because you do get to be alone on one way. And like in one sense, it feels like just you and I are talking to each other, and we can kind of ignore that people are watching.
no
So it's
comment,
very like
right?
public and very private at the same time. It's odd, yeah.
Right, right. And some of these are older pieces. I had a lot of platters. I'm not a potter by definition. Like I'm actually a really shitty thrower, but I do my best. I do my best, Greg Pace and Katrina Chater and others. Just shut your pie holes. But but a lot of things crack. I just let them cool too fast. This unfortunately has a crack. But what I started to do was do the kind of the kitsune. How do you pronounce that? Kitsune.
Kintsugi, yeah, the
Yeah, kitsune.
repair. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but instead of doing a small amount, I like actually wedge the plate right apart, and I stuff it full of epoxy, like putty epoxy, and then I paint it with acrylic paints and such. And sometimes it's really jarring. Like I made some Evil Knievel platters where he's making the jump, like he's making
Uh-huh.
a serious leap. So that's one thing. I also like to mine Canadian humor, Canadian iconography. So
Oh my gosh.
this is a Zamboni machine here, and
Can could you go in a little bit closer on that one and then
sure,
maybe walk us through the imagery to
sure. Well,
help us see it?
it's actually based on the Chinese famille noir history. If you want to go to the Gardner,
So that's Chinese enamel decorated ceramics, 18th,
exactly,
19th
and look
century.
that
Yeah.
up. So that but there's famille noir and Jean and Vert, and if you don't know French, you just look that up. But so that went down to Bonspiel as well, which the show in Minneapolis was a celebration of like Canadian love of sport per se. So yeah, there's that. And then last night I was digging things up, and I'm really politically active, or try to be. And I don't think I earn any friends by doing it, but whatever. The time is now. The time is now. And so I made this piece for also a show in Minneapolis before NCCA, and it's Black Panther for sure, but oriented for sure. But then I was listening to Dave Chang, the chef who's got
Right.
Momofuku in Toronto. Have you been there?
I've been to some of the milk bars, yeah,
You
but not the
have?
main restaurants, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like $1 million, right?
Yeah, not to the big restaurant, just the bar ones.
But Dave Chang's podcast on race relations and particularly Asian Black relations, because the 1992 LA riots were fierce,
Right, right.
fierce. So he's had on some academics. Nothing's really food related in those podcasts, but I've been trying to speak to that too with pieces. This is a piece that I'm working on, have been working on for a bit, and a series. There's some uterus there, uteri. Can you?
Uh-huh.
And
So,
also coat hangers.
uh-huh.
Get my phone out there. So it's a platter. I don't know what you serve on that, but I mean, I'm also really interested in English ceramics, in Sèvres porcelain, in really fancy things. Okay, because you are from the States, who said walk softly and carry a big stick? The quote, is it Roosevelt? Was it Roosevelt?
Yeah, I didn't know I was
Anyway,
going to have
I'll get
an
it.
American history quiz, but yeah, I think it was I
Exactly. I
think it
think
was like Roosevelt or one of the presidents, yeah, kind of
yeah,
mid-century president.
yeah. So the point is to use decorative elements to draw in people to what they know or what they feel they know. And actually, the Zamboni piece, people wrote, somebody, I'm forgetting his name at the moment, forgive me, but he saw like Han Dynasty, he saw Haida, like the Black graphic quality. But it's really interesting to draw on other cultures. And I don't know, as a sort of half person of culture, as far as my mom being from, she's not from Japan, but she's of Japanese descent, and unfortunately endured the Canadian internment camps, just as in America. Um, it's hard to figure out what you what you can make, what you should make, what do you
Right.
own these days. But I just like
So
we
how do you think about that in terms of the imagery that you choose, which is so often, I mean, it's narrative in a sense. It's very, you're pulling from history. Obviously, you can, in a way, you could sort of pitch it anywhere in terms of how
yeah,
overtly political it is versus
yeah.
how subtle it is. And how do you think about that, or how have you thought about that in the past, and then how do you think about it now, and are those any different?
Oh, I think now it's completely different. I think, in fact, now with the not only pandemic but also protests, like I have no problem. My dad, hopefully, he's listening or not listening, but he was like, "Don't mention Trump too often," and not that he's a Trump supporter or anything like that, but he's like, "You could get sued and you could do." Now he's like, he doesn't care, whatever. Like,
Filters are
go
off.
get him
Yeah.
fined,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Exactly. So this is using ping. So this is like, I think it's called the Deaf, Dumb, Blind Kid Sure Plays a Mean Pinball. So, of course, it's really heavily drawing on historical Chinese ceramics. I love the decoration and design. I love actually trying to figure out like what all the symbolism means. Like, what do magnolias mean? What do peonies mean?
Right.
What, so I think I'm just going to draw you over to this one piece before I forget. Not that it's a great unreal, but it's a good way to kind of wrap things up. But this is Donald Trump, who I hate painting, just so you
Oh, I
know.
see. Yeah. Could
And
you go in a little bit closer for
of
us?
course, and Stormy Daniels.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So there's some
She's looking
bananas,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
All
and
right.
there's some oranges, and there's some fakes and some flakes. So I've turned the White House. And again, I love my American friends. I've spent a lot of time in America, so I'm not dissing you. I'm with you. But it's a bit of a plantation. Do I hear a cat?
You hear kids screaming outside, which is like a cat, but not
Screaming
exactly.
cat.
I have an open
Exactly.
window. Yeah.
Exactly. But the
So
other
you've
thing,
also spoken about how the internet is like a big source for you in terms
mm,
of images and ideas. And one of the funny things about kind of online image sources is that they're often completely decontextualized. Like it's just, say, a flower or a figure or a face or something. And it's
Sure.
often separated from its original meaning. And so thinking about how you're kind of recombining these images and creating new meanings, like how obligated do you feel to the original context of some of these images? Or say Stormy Daniels even, like how much
Oh,
does
yeah.
her image shift for you as it goes through the Mariko filter?
Well, I actually like started following on Twitter. I actually start reading like what she's writing and her critique. And I mean, I hate to say it, like what I thought would be sort of a bimbo feed has now turned into quite an intellectual response to a questionable presidential choice,
Right.
to be honest. So everything's fair game. But I mean, I also
You're, you're back. You're back.
can you hear me?
Yep, you're back. We're good.
Okay, sorry. I think can I flip around for the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, yeah,
Shall
sure.
I? Yeah, okay. Um, this is what I wanted to do. I think that there's lots of mistakes that we've made out there as far as things that we've made, questionable things that we've made. I won't go into the politics of all of it, but like the latest thing I saw was, do you know Peggy Noland, who's a fashion designer? She's out of Kansas City. She made it, she's like really big. She's a super social activist in LA, but she unfortunately made some bodysuits, which are like skin, which are maybe perceived as blackface of Oprah for women's bodies.
Huh.
Like, and so she has this really authentic apology for it. And I don't want to kill her career. I don't want to kill any of our careers, but how do we
Yeah.
reckon with the imagery that we've used in the past? And for me, undermining all this historical ceramics, which is hundreds of years old, in some ways, it's like some people have like a dress up trunk or whatever you want to call it that they go in and I wasn't a kid who played with Barbies, but like historical ceramics is that for me. Like going
Right.
going to the New York Strand and buying Christie's auction catalog for $2, like that's my resource, that's my source. But I just want to be really careful now of not saying something untoward. But at the same time, I also want to, I really do want to pick at what's going on politically in the world here.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think reckon with is really an apt phrase for this because I think in a lot of different, and also your use of we, sort of the things that we make is, I mean, that's inclusive in the sense that it's like, it's you, it's me, it's institutions, it's everybody. Like we
Yeah.
are making this kind of world that we live in. And so how do we reckon with, what we've done in the past or what's existed in the past and what we carry forward into the
Right.
present? I
Right.
mean, maybe with that in mind, a final question could be like, what are you thinking about looking forward? Like, what are you thinking is important for you to make
Well, now that all the
next?
exhibitions have been canceled, anything I want.
Right. Open field.
Well, I have, again, I'm sure my dad will hear this at some point, but I don't have a great relationship with my mother, who is Japanese Canadian. It blew her family apart.
Yeah.
But I also have a therapist friend that I talk to as far as, I forget the name of the term where you hold other people's the generations of pain in your body. So even though I have always felt uncomfortable speaking to, say, the internment camps, I feel like that's something that's going to bubble up. That's because I can song and dance around Asian ceramics all I want, but I need to try and figure out how to work that in,
Yeah.
how to make a statement. And again, I think David Chang's podcasts, talking about Asians and African American folk in LA, especially because both sides were like crazy disenfranchised. Like how do you work that in? But at the same time, I don't want to own my mother's everything. Like
Sure.
she's super 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 private about it. But at the same time, I can own that.
Yeah,
I
well, you
am
have part of it. Yeah.
the uterus piece there talks about the politicizing of not getting abortions in the States over pandemics right now.
Right.
Like, how convenient is that?
Hmm.
Um, so there's all sorts of things. I mean, I was just driving around Halifax today, and some 80s station, which is what I listen to on the radio, made a slave joke. You know, like
Oh, wow, for real?
I got literally pulled the car over and called
Oh,
them.
God.
And so it was there's no end to the material out
It's
there.
still happening.
It's
Yeah,
still
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I know a lot of people have like stopped and they're not making or they don't know what to make. And do you know that the Sadashi Inuzuka? Do you know that
Yeah,
name?
yeah,
Yeah, he's
sure.
out of the West Coast now. I taught at the University of Michigan over a summer once, and he made furiously. And I was like, "Why do you make so much stuff?" And he said, "Because people always cancel shows. People always bow out. You just keep making shit, and you just have a show." So I'm like, just keep making shit, and you just like it'll happen. But
That's a
I do
great thing to, yeah, that's
exactly,
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. But
So
I'm not
maybe all
one.
the artists with us can carry that with them forward too. Yeah.
Mhm. But I do want to say, because I'm shameless, and I did live in the U.S., so I'm gonna say that
Those aren't the same thing?
yeah, I know, yeah, yeah, I know. So I get to plug 1 minute. New website. I'm also going to be doing a podcast, not completely ceramic centric, called Electric Lady Orchestra. Hopefully out in July. You probably see that I cook. I did get a cookbook dangled in front of my face, so we're gonna work on that. I do want to give a special shout out to Samara Contemporary in Toronto. I only have a couple pieces there, but I support your locals. Support your locals. We lost a gallery
Absolutely.
here, the Craft Council Gallery. So I
Right.
know a lot of people are really trying to buck up and learn how to be online. So I'm there.
Yep.
I'm there
Now's the
to help.
time. It's time to make
I
and
know.
do, so to speak, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow, this has
Right.
been really fun. Thank you so much, Mariko, for spending the time with
Okay. All
us,
right.
showing us some work. It's really great. It's great to talk to you. Great to see your work. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, too.
And we'll see you
Um,
at the Gardner in July.
yeah, come to the garden. We're opening on July, oh, I should know this, July 9th or 11th. We're opening
One of
soon,
those.
so check the
And
check the
and
website or
and the
Instagram.
raw exhibition is going to be continued into the fall, into October.
That's right. Rockclay will continue at least into October, likely November. So
When
lots of
planes
time.
fly in the sky, I will be there.
Very good. We look forward to it.
I'm
Okay,
going to
thank you
fire
so
up
much.
Paul.
Excellent. Thank you, and thanks everyone. We'll see you all
Take
next week.
care. Bye. Bye,
Toodaloo. Bye
Toronto.
bye.
Bye.